Greetings, everybody. Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Wonders Radio Show for June the 10th, 2012. Once again, I'll be your host. My name is Jeff Scarrett. And this week, we got a really big show for you. That was my... I guess that's Ed Sullivan, right? So this week we did, like I mentioned, I planned to do a current events show. So in the last session, the Wonders and I had finished talking about... some of the events going on in the Middle East. So we started from there, and there were some questions that came in that were similar to that, things about the economic situation in Europe and some different ideas that all kind of flowed from there. So again, we did two sessions, but after listening back to it, because the content kind of flows into each other, I thought it would be best just to keep it as one session, and then we'll do a different topic next time. So in other news... the Wonders Retreat cometh. It's that time of year again. It is almost the end of June, and as I mentioned in the previous shows, the Wonders Summer Retreat called Changing the Illusions That Create Life is starting on June 29th to the 12th, so it's 2 weeks, and there might be spots available. I'm not 100% sure, but if you're interested, contact thewonders.com, and the registration, all the information is there. And we'll be sure to do a session before that, so there'll be a radio show before that, but there may not be one during. We'll see how that all works out. But there surely will be one after we all get back, so that'll be pretty exciting, with some fresh perspective and new explorations to be explored. So how do you even describe it? It really is difficult to describe Wonders Retreat. It's such an experiential, in the moment kind of experience that even listening back to the recordings, you only get a portion of the intensity that's there in the moment when you're all together and exploring with Renee and Maggie, and of course the Wonders when they come through. And it really is it's hard to really put it into a few words. But anyone out there interested in exploring, outside of the box and just really getting into everything, basically everything, there's no place like it. And sometimes people say, well, can't you just do it yourself? And of course you can. I mean, you don't. It's not about needing the Wonders. It's not about anything like that. It's just a lot of times we don't listen to that part of ourselves that you could say where the Wonders, quote unquote, reside, within all of us. A lot of times we don't listen to that. So sometimes it's nice to have a guide to help you through certain things. And, with the benefit of Renee and Maggie, Renee being someone who has been there himself. So, I mean, someone who has already traveled that path to help you along the way is there's no substitute for it, really. So if that's your thing, contact Renee and Maggie via thewonders.com. and see if there's any spots open. So without further ado, thanks everyone for tuning in and listening, and thanks for sending in your questions. Thanks for sharing these links on Facebook or whatever, if you're listening and you're enjoying everything you're hearing. And next week we'll do a different topic. It won't be current events. We'll try something new. Who knows? Who knows where it'll lead? Maybe we'll talk about illusions or movement or something a little more experiential, as opposed to, coming from the mind angle and, just sort of being fed the quote unquote mind candy, as the Wonders like to say, that we've all definitely had our fill of, I'm sure. Or not. It remains to be seen, I guess. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for listening, and thanks for sharing, and enjoy the session, and we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everyone.
Yes, we have this one.
Thank you. May we begin?
Please.
Okay, Jeff.
Greetings, Wonders.
Greetings, Jeff.
I'd like to start today. We left off on the last show talking a little bit about the situation that's going on in our Middle East, and I'd like to continue with that.
Please.
So it looks as though we have people looking for self-empowerment, wanting more freedom, being tired of being told what to do. We have the government looking for more control, tightening everything, and religion, of course, telling everyone what to believe and how to live. So coming from this position, how could we get to a position of more of a coexistence, allowance, cooperation? I mean, I don't think oneness is really in the cards at this point, but I mean, if we could just coexist without destroying each other.
That's a difficulty. because there is so much judgment from one perspective to another that eventually coexistence is a possibility, but it's not going to be in the near term. What you're finding is, as you said yourself, the religious judgments, the religious perspective, if you want to call it that, has influenced the psychology, the belief structures of the individuals. The government structure has influenced the psychology and the belief structures of individuals. Propaganda influences that. So really what you have is you have a number of people that, though it seems on the surface that they want to be empowered, are really truly looking simply to find a better disempowerment perspective. Mm-hmm. They're not looking to be empowered. They're looking simply to find something that they can live under a little easier. Someone that will take care of them a little better. Someone that will take their power and truly tell them how to live, but do it in a nicer way. Okay? So, what we, of course, have advocated, since we've come into this perspective to have conversations with all of you, is we've advocated the self-empowerment of the individual. For if you empower the individual, eventually you empower the planet. Mm-hmm. And eventually you empower the whole race. But the individuals in the Middle East, and not just in the Middle East, by the way, in every country in the world presently, they're not looking to really empower themselves. And they're certainly not on a mass scale. They're looking, let's face it, if they were to look to empower themselves, they wouldn't be looking for commonality. They would be looking for that which would empower them as individuals, and in that there would develop a commonality. What they're looking for right now is they're looking for someone to tell them how to live, what to do, in a nicer way. Mm-hmm. Do you see the point? Mm-hmm. So, no, you're not going to get what you're looking for right now. And to say to yourself, well, how can we move to that direction? Again, and look at the individuals. It is about providing to each individual the awareness, the understandings, the knowledge, the words to guide them to choose for themselves that which would empower them. And look at yourself, dear Jeff. Mm-hmm. You would say to yourself, well, I'm an empowered individual. I'm certainly choosing more and more for myself. Mm-hmm. And yet still, you don't question things around you. You don't question how the government runs things. You don't question how the society itself is put together. No one's questioning this. In your country right now, there is no dialogue going on that would infuse into individuals a certain sense of questioning the status quo. Is there? Mm-hmm. Not in yourself and not in anyone else. So really, if there's no questioning, then how can there be self-empowerment? Now, it'll be argued that wouldn't it be beneficial then if once the questioning is completed, that everyone comes to a certain understanding, and then at that point everyone's empowered, and then everyone can go along and do the same thing. But if you go ahead and change yourself to an empowered individual, and then you stop questioning, the question we have for you is, are you at that point empowered? Mm-hmm. Or are you simply giving your power away to the answers that you've received and not looking beyond them?
Mm-hmm. It's just comfortable.
Exactly. And so, empowerment is not a journey of attempting to find another state of comfort. Mm-hmm. Empowerment is really a journey of being uncomfortable forever. Mm-hmm. And people don't like that.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
So, look at the Middle East. No, you're not going to get empowerment. But what you can get is you can get accommodation. What we see for the Middle East is we see that things will start to shift over the next 5 to 7 years, where more and more individuals are going to look more towards the democratic or the democracy as a model for existence. Mm-hmm. Okay? That being said, that doesn't mean they'll achieve it, That doesn't mean that they will get it. It does mean that that's what they'll look for. So realize that many, many individuals in the Middle East are looking for a greater autonomy, a greater freedom, but freedom without any cost. And freedom always has a cost, and the cost is choosing. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
It's not much of a cost, but it does require self-choice.
Yeah, you got to make the step.
Of course. How can you be free if you're not willing to choose to be free?
Mm-hmm.
You can have a semblance of freedom, like here in Canada, for example, or in the United States, or in any democratically elected country. You think you have a certain sense of freedom. In the United States, there's a constitution that is supposed to protect you. But take a look at your United States. Are individuals within that country truly protected? There are laws upon laws designed to limit the freedoms of individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And other laws that are, by their very nature, not assisting individuals towards their freedom. The same as in Canada. The same in pretty well every democratic elected country in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You would say, well, yes, but there is certain freedoms. Of course you have the freedom. For example, here in Canada and in the United States, you're free to speak your mind at any time. But do not say the words terrorist, bomb, at an inopportune moment, and you will find how quickly your freedom is lost.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see?
Mm-hmm. And people accept it out of fear, of course, right?
Of course. Absolutely. Don't say it on the telephone. Certainly don't say it on a cell phone, for you will be monitored by the security systems.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
So, and yet, individuals believe that it is quite appropriate to let go of certain freedoms. In the United States, freedom of speech was one of the foundations of that particular country. It's what brought that country about, is the ability to speak freely.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the same in Canada. You didn't have that foundation in Canada, by the way. You were never allowed to speak freely in Canada. It was a myth that you thought you had. But in the United States, it was part of the foundation. And yet, you take a look at the country, the United States now, and there are more laws limiting the freedom of speech than at any other time in its history. Interestingly enough.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at the world right now, the way it is, the best you can hope for is a willingness to not kill each other.
Yeah.
And as you said, the idea that you can let live and let live. However, based on the judgments that we see ingrained into religion, ingrained into societies, based on the anger, the fear that exists, we don't see that happening. There's going to be people killing each other for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm. What's your perspective on, let's take Syria at the moment. At the moment, it's getting a lot of attention. There's a gentleman by the name of Bashar Assad who's heading the government there.
Yes.
What's from your perspective, when it comes to allowance and bringing somebody to justice, what's your perspective on that? Like, when should people allow and when should people have swift justice to deal with people like this?
When they choose.
Yeah. I guess it seems like everyone's having such a hard time making that choice. Like,
but you see, it's not that they're having a hard time making the choice. They're having a hard time justifying making the choice.
Yeah.
You see, when Saddam Hussein was attacked, it was an easy justification. Oil was at the center of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You see? Syria doesn't have quite the same impact that Iraq did.
Mm-hmm.
You see? Libya, it was easy to attack it. Oil was at the center of and the money, of course, was at the center of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Syria doesn't quite have that appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see?
Yeah.
So, again, and that, plus the fact that there's not the stomach in the world right now to go to another war.
No.
People don't want another war.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, the best you can do at this point is to do what the world is doing, which is letting the United Nations basically state that when everything is settled and the dust is settled, individuals will be held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think?
Yeah. And what's your perspective on the debt situation that we have going on in our European part of the world? Even just the concept of debt. It seems like a strange concept for people to accept. There's all these trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, but what is it? What is it really?
Well, what it's really is that it's an illusion that has been created. Wealth is an illusion, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's an illusion. No one really has wealth.
No.
You would think that yourself, for example, you go to work, you make money every day, you diligently put it in the bank, you pay your bills, you save so much, etc., okay?
Mm-hmm.
But you want to buy something else, so you go into debt to buy it, and then you pay it off. And you're a good little payer. So you go away and you work hard, diligently, pay off your debt, and then go back into debt and pay it off, and it's a cycle that you have your whole life. In countries, again, consider that the whole illusion of a country and what it really is nothing more than a definition created to define a region that says that they're autonomous from all the others.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the past, when individuals wanted to create wealth, they simply created wealth. You see?
Mm-hmm.
Countries, kings, etc., they simply just created wealth. Now, it was a little harder in the days of old where the kings had to rely on gold coins and things of that nature. Do you think? They were not so easily duplicated. But then when the monetary system went from gold basis to paper basis, it became easy to quite simply create wealth. The more you printed, the easier it was. Now, basically, you have a system in your world presently where paper isn't even the basis of wealth. It is electronic numbers, manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
Really, if a country wants to create wealth, all they have to do is manipulate the numbers for themselves. You see? However, they've given away that power to the banks within the countries, the private enterprise. So private individuals are saying to the countries, you are no longer allowed to create wealth. We are the only ones that create wealth. You must borrow from us, and in so doing, we basically control your wealth generation abilities. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So the difficulty in the European Union right now is that certain countries who were used to generating their own wealth are no longer generating their own wealth. They're part of a European Union financial conglomerate where they can no longer simply print more money electronically or paper-wise. And so the resultant is that they now are being told by those individuals, banks, if you want to call it that, that are in effect holding, and we use that term very, very loosely in large quotation marks, the debt, again, large quotation marks very loosely, of the countries, and they're being told that they now must repay that debt. Why? Because the banks are now at the point where they have overextended themselves. They've lent too much and they don't have enough of a base. But really, it's not that, really. It's that, quite simply, if everyone in the world presently went after their money, there wouldn't be enough to pay 1/10 of everything you think you have in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Wealth is just an illusion right now.
Mm-hmm.
Wonders, may we pause a moment?
Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Wonders.
We do thank you, dear Maggie. Please.
From your perspective, what would be the most beneficial monetary system for humanity at the moment, if this clearly is not going to work?
Well, let's put it this way. If everybody wanted as much as they, or had as much as they wanted, then there wouldn't be no difficulties, would there be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a
Do you think?
perspective.
If the banks had what they wanted, the governments had what they wanted, people had what they wanted, would there be any difficulty?
No.
Of course not. Since wealth is all an illusion anyways, why not just simply create an illusion where everyone has it?
Yeah. So easy.
Well, it is the simple
Yeah.
solution, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not a question of having more. It's a question of having sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a question of having sufficient wealth. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
So look at it from that perspective. If you want to do more, simply create more. If you want to do less, create less. So look at it from that perspective, and if every individual and every member within the government or the country, every citizen, so to speak, had the whatever they wanted to satisfy their desires to create, then why would they need to concern themselves with lack? Do you see?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you see, in the world that you live in, no one is really, including yourself or anyone else, is really prepared to live equally with everyone else. Everyone wants a one-upmanship on the other.
Mm-hmm.
You want to improve your status. You want to improve your standard of living. You want to improve the way your wealth. You want to be more wealthy than the other person. You don't look at yourself on the basis of sufficiency. You look at yourself on the basis of greater than or lesser than.
Mm-hmm.
And so the resultant is, of course, you're looking always for more and more and more. But let's say that you wanted a new car, and you were able to get it. Just go get it. Not a big deal, is it?
No.
But you see, there's a country, there's a government, there's a bank somewhere that says, sorry, you can't get it until you XXX. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
Until you do this, or this. So now you have to go out and do this in order to get that car. You see?
Play the game.
Exactly. And it's a game. It's a game being run by individuals who are intent on being greater than all the others around them.
Mm-hmm.
You don't live in a world where sufficiency is the basis of existence. You live in a world where profit and loss is the basis of existence.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see?
Now, and you would the people at the top of that pyramid, or the people that are so willing to want to keep that going, it doesn't seem like that they would ever want to stop.
Of course not. And they won't.
Mm-hmm.
We hesitate to say this, but it will require a revolution in the consciousness of humanity to really shift this.
Mm-hmm.
And by revolution, we don't mean here everybody standing up and fighting with guns and sticks and stones. Do you see?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're talking about revolutionizing truly the way individuals see themselves. And that requires some guidance, which is why we've encouraged humanity to look at electing governments that are there to guide them, not there to do things for them. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
So again, how do you get that? Well, again, it requires individuals such as yourself to change your consciousness. You assist others, you become the example. Others observe you. They start to move to change their consciousness. And eventually that it propagates itself to the point where eventually there's sufficient shift in the consciousness that governments become elected on the basis of desire to guide, not on the basis of, please tell us what to do.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
And when that begins to happen, then in the guidance process, the government's guiding the members of society, the citizens of its society, will guide them to recognize their sufficiency, and then will change the whole monetary system and will take away that power away from the banking system that will that has been created. By the way, this whole banking system came about in the approximately 5,000 years before the Nazarene, and not before then. You see?
What was before that?
There was no necessity. If you wanted something, you went and got it.
Mm-hmm.
But then came the desire for power and greed and money was invented, and at that point, it became how things were traded.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
Money, really, has become the call it the cancer that eats away at your society.
Mm-hmm. And it comes before all else.
It does. Now, is there anything else you'd like to talk about? We've talked about this now for a couple of these radio shows. Let's explore something different. We know it's a little dull and boring, so let's try something a little lighter.
Yeah. I had a couple other questions here, but let's change the subject, I guess. Let's talk about the concept of allowance and how it seems like all the religions and spiritual teachings point towards that direction, or sort of come from a love and allowance, but it seems to be the one thing that every one of them is missing or not teaching these days.
It's difficult to be the example, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess that's what it comes down to, isn't it?
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
What are religions but really an organization that has set itself up as an example?
Mm-hmm.
Look at yourself. You're having difficulty being an example of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're a brilliant, talented, gifted individual, and you're having difficulty just letting that come out.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you really expect religions who are large organizations made up of many, many people, each with their own egos and personalities and agendas?
Mm-hmm.
Do you expect these organizations to really, truly be an example of true spirituality?
Mm-hmm.
Of course not. They've been bastardized by ego and personality.
Mm-hmm.
So take ego and personality out of the equation, and then you have an allowance to an organization that can allow exploration. Of course, religion being a spiritual organization can allow spiritual exploration.
Mm-hmm.
You see? However, let's face it, the individuals that were involved in religions saw it as an opportunity to gain power and make money.
Mm-hmm.
How else do you explain the whole basis of religions? The intent originally may have been spiritual. It may have been moral even in some cases. For example, the Lutheran Church came about as a result of morality. The Anglican Church came about as a result of morality. It had nothing to do with spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
You see? So these organizations were created as a result of a moral difference. And in the moral difference, basically, it became an organization for power.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have in the world that you exist in presently is you have a variety of different organizations, all designed to have power and to use that power against individuals or with individuals. The majority of and as any power organization, as you realize, the ones that have the true power are never the ones that are holding up the organization and maintaining it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the individuals that are at the top running it. You see?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Take a pyramid. Now, which one's the most powerful? The layer on the bottom that holds the whole pyramid up, or the tip?
Mm-hmm. The bottom.
Yes. But you would say so, but yet in the world that you live in, you've been convinced that without the tip, the bottom cannot exist.
Mm-hmm.
You see the twisted psychology?
Yeah, yeah.
Without the bottom, there is no tip.
Mm-hmm.
Without all of those little people holding things up, the ones on the top just don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
But you live in such a world of illusion that you believe strongly that without the tip, there's no benefit to being on the bottom.
That's true. Insufficiency is scary.
Very much.
Mm-hmm. what then? All that responsibility all at once, right?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? If you weren't on the bottom of the pyramid, where would you be?
Yeah.
You see? Could you live in a flat world where there is no mountains, no pyramids?
Mm-hmm.
Could you live in a world where all things are equal?
Mm-hmm.
You see? Most people would sit there and say, through their ego personalities, not through themselves, but through their ego personalities, they would say that would be boring. They would be boring because there would be, through the judgment, nothing to stimulate the mind. And it is the mind stimulation that is paramount in your lives. The reason you're having these conversations with us isn't because really, truly, the world can change. It's because your audience members, everyone is fascinated by the concept and the mind is puzzling it out. So really, it's just more candy for the mind. All of these conversations have been candy for the mind. Look at it from this perspective, dear Jeff. Don't you just get excited trying to figure out things?
It depends what it is.
Well, look at the Middle East. Look at...
Yeah, to me, honestly, it's not that interesting. I think it is from the perspective of the underlying psychologies, but
yes,
I know what you're saying as far as like now is not, things aren't going to change, next week or next year or even in 100 years. But it was more. I guess having the radio show, you almost think, okay, well, let's talk about something that applies to everybody's lives and
of course,
something that people are aware of,
Well, you want to know what applies to everybody's lives? The zipper on their pants. It applies to everybody. Interestingly enough. So we could talk about that too.
That's true.
Food in their belly. Talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
You see? All we're saying to you is that the minds of individuals, everyone in the world has a mind. And those minds need stimulation, require it, demand it. Do you see? And if they don't have a problem, they'll invent one. If they don't have a puzzle, they'll figure one out and invent it again. So those who are in the positions of power in your world recognize this fact and so provide you with enough of a puzzle to worry about, to puzzle out, in such a way as to distract you from the aspect that in doing so, you are losing your power.
So easy.
Of course. It is the easiest thing to do to take power away from an individual who is not fully conscious. Distract them with something. Give them a hockey game, a football game. Give them as the Romans used to do, give them a good show. Get a few people killed. Do you see? Lions eating the Christians. That's always a good show. Do you see? Gladiators, etc., etc. Battle. And then, in the distraction, they won't notice that you've actually taken more and more of their freedoms away. Do you see? And in the world that you live in, that's going on right now. In the United States, as we said, you have less freedom of speech now than you've ever had since the United States was first formed. And all because in governments, individuals in power have used the distraction method to take that power away from you. And individuals in the United States have consistently ensured and voted for the removal of their own power. All the while being given something to laugh about.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's constant.
Well, you do it with your family. You do it with your friends. How many times have you told your friend one thing and all the while ended up doing something else? You see? You want your friend to go drinking beer with you. Or rephrase, let's say you want to take your friend's car, but he's not willing to lend it. So you offer him a case of beer, you get him drunk, next thing you know, you're driving his car. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
Same idea.
Keep them happy and they won't know what's going on, right?
Exactly. And this session must end, dear friend.
Okay.
We do thank you. To you, the appreciation of all.
The appreciation of all wonders.
Wonders, may I move to end this session?
Please.
Please perform all healings that are chosen.
Done.
Please relax the body to its natural state now.
And to you all, the appreciation of all.
The appreciation of all wonders. I would like Renee to awake feeling completely loved now.
Came out of that session. Boy, I was having a good time. I was in the middle of a field, and I was seeing all these gorgeous women dancing. It's like cheerleaders, and I'm drinking beer, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, this is fun. And I look down at my body, and all of a sudden my body's one great big fat beer-guzzling guy. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, how did I get here? And I realized that I got here by just keeping on drinking beer. That's all I got.